Hi everyone. Sorry we started a little bit late. But today is going to be the demo on databases, what we learned on Monday. And today I want to start off by just telling you guys what we're changing to our code base. So in the PA2 starter, which starts like I guess this week and is also due Monday, we'll give you this starter code. Has a source folder, has requirements.txt again. And you can see that we split the code into two files, app.py and db.py. What this does is we're trying to separate the logic from that, like the framework essentially. So remember how last time we had the client server model and then the server could connect to a database? Well, that's what we're doing here. So app.py is like our server and db.py will be our database or like the connection to the database. So let me just walk through what it looks like for now. So app.py is the same like last time. An additional thing here is we have this new db variable, which is just instantiating our database driver, which is how we connect to the database. You have the same route format, you have the same like app thing, and you have the same main thing here. Our routes will look a little bit different because we're connecting to a DB. And today we'll be building off the same project we made last time, which is the to-do list app. And for the DB, it looks, wait, should I introduce it now? Yeah. For the db.py, it looks something like this. I will explain it. Yeah. So the db.py, you import OS, import SQLite 3. So in this case, we're not using SQLite 3 inside the terminal. We're going to be using it inside a Python file. You have this function called singleton, and you have these instances. And what this function does, it just allows us to make one single instance of a thing. So I explain it properly. Like singleton function will only make one instance of a thing, and we'll put the thing in later. But just know that the singleton is to make sure you have one copy of something. And then below here we have our database driver class. So this is a database driver for the task app, and this will handle the reading and writing, all the SQL queries between your server and your database. And we'll also build this part by ourselves. And this is where we use the singleton. So we only want one instance of the database driver. So we put that into the singleton function. So we ensure that only one instance of the database driver exists at all times. Yep. And this is all the starter code. So it will come in the PA2 starter. Yep.
Yeah. Um, yeah, make sure to download the demo starter. It's in chapter 2 in pre-class to-dos so that you have like the same starter code as us.
I used the PA2 so.
It's the same. Okay, so here's our database driver, and this is how we initialize our database and how we're gonna add data to, how do I turn it?
Sorry. Let's disable. Here we go.
Yeah. So first we're gonna initialize our database driver class. So if you're unfamiliar with Python, def init is just the constructor of the class. So this is where we're gonna initialize our instance. So I'm just gonna add comments just so it's clear. So secure is a connection. Okay, so we're gonna make a variable called con. So this is how we connect to our database. So we're gonna use SQLite 3.connect. And then here we're gonna have the name of our DB. So we're just gonna call it todo.db. And DB just stands for database. And then we have an extra variable, or like setting called check same thread. And we'll make this false. And this just prevents us from making multiple edits to the database at the same time. So there's benefits to setting it true, but it's outside the scope of this course. So we're just going to make it false. And then once we make the database, does anyone know what's the first step to initializing our database? What's the first thing we want to do? Yes. Nice. Oh, sorry. Yeah, create a table. So we're gonna call a function called create task table. And we haven't created this function yet, so we're gonna do that right now. So we're gonna define a function, create task table. I'm gonna So here I'm utilizing the database variable that we initialized in our constructor. So I'm gonna execute a SQL command, and this is where we add all like basically our SQL co commands that we learned last week or on Monday, sorry. And then we're gonna do create table if not exists task. And then here we're gonna add all of our fields, so all of our columns. So the first thing we want to do is have the ID. So this is going to be an integer variable. And then remember, primary key makes it the unique identifier. So each row has a unique ID, and then it's going to auto increment as we continue adding rows. And then we also have a description, and this is a text column, so it's going to have a string data type. And we're going to make sure it's not empty. And then lastly, a done, which will have a Boolean data type, and then it will also not be empty. And then remember the semicolon. That's how we execute the command. Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically it. If not exists is something new that we added. It's just to make sure that we haven't already created the table. And then we're also going to make a new another function called delete task table. It's kind of unnecessary, but it's just good practice to have it. Yeah, so again, we're calling our database that we initialize in our constructor, and then we're executing this SQL command, which just basically deletes the table. Yeah, and then now we're actually going to be adding data.
Yep. So up to this point, I'm just gonna like summarize what Lauren has made. So what we did here is in app.py, this is our file last time, right? The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna call db.database_driver. This will call the init function in this class, and the init function it will number one connect to the database, and then number two it will create a task table, which will call this function right here. And what this function does is it will create a new table if it doesn't exist. So our data, like whenever we start our backend, we're gonna go through this whole process. So we might run into trouble if we don't use it, if not exists, we might run into trouble of duplicating the task table. So we just have that syntax there, create table if not exists. And then we put the table there. And then the other function here is just to connect, like use the connection variable to drop a table if we ever need to delete the like table. And also a quick note here, if you look at the todo.db right here, this will actually become a file. So when we run this later on, when we test it, you'll see a file pop up like right here. And this is going to be todo.db, and it's like where we store all our data basically. So yeah, any questions up to this point? Yeah, let's go. Save this, and then this is, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to be making all our CRUD endpoints, get, retrieve, update, delete. So let's start by getting all our tasks. So I'm going to create a new function called get all tasks, and Python we have to input self. And then this function will use SQL to return all the tasks in the table, like we did in the terminal last time. So let me copy the comment here. It's going to get all tasks in the table. Okay. And then, okay, in this get all tasks, sorry, I should make this nice. Okay, we're going to instantiate a new variable, and this variable will be named cursor. And it's going to be a bit difficult to like visualize. That's why we've made like a nice visualization, but let me just write this out first. So it's self.connection dot execute. And here I'm gonna use the SQL query, like select all from task. So this will just return all the task in the task table. And we're storing it in this variable called cursor. And what this will return, if we execute select all from task, it will return something that looks like a table, like an Excel sheet. So it looks something like this. You have a table with the ID, description, and done. And if we say get all, it's gonna give us everything. So it'll look like an Excel sheet. Um, yeah, except the header. So like imagine there's no header here. So like this, it's gonna return something like that. And then we can use this data, knowing how it looks. We can actually use this data. So I'm gonna work on packaging the data to make it look good, so we can set it back to app.py. So I'm gonna make a new list of tasks, and then I'm just gonna go row by row. For row in cursor, I am going to append the line to the task list. So I do task dot append, and here I want to make a new dictionary object because we've been using dictionary so far, and we're still gonna keep doing this. We have ID, and that will be row 0, right? So I'm getting every single row in the Excel thing. Row 0 will be the ID, which you can see here. Row, this is one row. Let's say this is like row of index 1, and you're getting the 0th index of this thing. So you're getting 1. You're getting the ID. And then you can keep going. You can do description. And that will be just row 1. And then you have the done, which is just in row of index 2. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going through, like for row and cursor, it goes through every single line. And then for each one, I'm grabbing index 0, index 1, and index 2. And I'm putting that inside this tasks list. And then all I have to do is just return tasks. And this function to get all tasks, this is a database function. And later on, when we implement our routes in app.py, it will call this function to get all tasks. So you can see how we're abstracting out, we're separating the logic of getting from the database and displaying to the user. We're putting the display stuff in app.py, and we're putting all the logic in db.py. So this is how it looks. Any questions for this one? Okay, let's keep going. Oh, let me do one more. Okay. So yeah, now let's immediately connect it to a route. So we have the function in the db.py. Let's go to our app.py now. We're going here. And then I'm going to make a new route, like how we always do. I'm just going to copy this. So this route will be /tasks, which will get all tasks. I'm going to name it get tasks. And let's remove this. And here, let's put a nice comment. Endpoint for getting all tasks. Okay. So we have the logic. Now this is the endpoint. So here, all I have to do is I just have to call the function I made in DB, right? So I'm just going to return And here I'm going to do json.dumps, like we always do. And I'm going to set the return or like the code to 200. And now let's figure out what we have to put in here. So here we want a dictionary with the key tasks, and then that will have all the tasks in a nice list, which is what db.py will return to us. It returns a list of all the tasks. So all we have to do is actually call this function in db.py. So I'm just going to do db.getAllTask, which will get us a list of all the tasks. And db here, this db variable is our connect, like this is our db object up here, which is an object, an instantiation of that db class. Does that make sense to everyone? So what we just did is we made the logic in db.py to get all the tasks and return as a list. And then in app.py, this is our server, we made a route, and all we have to do is call that function. And it looks much cleaner. So all your routes will look more simple, and all the logic, remember how you had like a bunch of for loops last time? That's all moved to db.py. Does that make sense?
Test.
Yeah, let me test it real quick. So let me run it. I'm gonna do Python app py, and then it's run. Yeah, there's gonna be nothing, but I mean it works now. Yeah, let's just try it. Let's make new. Here's gonna be actually we can just use the same one as last time. Get all tasks. Get all tasks. If I send this, it should have nothing. But you can see the format is just task and then empty list for now. So now let's make the next function. You wanna do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me stop this first.
Okay, so next we're gonna get task by ID. So first we're gonna add another function to our db.py to get a task by ID. So we're gonna define a new function, get task by ID. And then one of our parameters is going to be ID because we need to know what ID we're working with. And then I'm gonna do a quick comment. So like last time, we're gonna use cursor, self.con.execute. Does anyone remember the SQL command to get a specific task by its ID? Yes.
Would it be like the same at once?
Yeah.
Want an egg?
Yes.
Yeah, so like she said, it's the same thing from above. Select asterisk from task where ID. This time it's going to be a little different than what we use in the terminal. So we're going to use a question mark. And then for our second parameter in the execute function, we're going to pass in our ID that we have here in the function argument. So basically what this does is it replaces this question mark with whatever ID that we're passing in. And it's really important to have that comma at the end as well. And then we're going to do the same like previously for row and cursor, return. And then here we just need to return one singular task. So we're just going to return the object. We're just going to create an object here and then add in all of the key values. And then what happens when there's no task where the ID, like for example, if you call ID equals 3 and there's no task with ID equals 3, then cursor is going to be empty. There's going to be no row with that ID. So then we're not going to return that task. So if cursor is empty, it's going to skip this for loop, right? And so afterwards we can just return none. Does that make sense? Okay.
Ready?
Just a quick question, like when you like the triple quotes inside the execute and when do you not? Because on the first method, did like triple quotes. Like the first method.
Oh, the create table.
Yeah, create table.
Oh, this is because we're doing the SQL command on multiple lines, so we need those triple quotes. But then here, it's just on one line.
It's just Python syntax. If you want a multi-line string, you use 3.
Oh,
Okay, now we can connect it to our app.py. So we're just gonna make a new endpoint. And then remember, we're gonna pass in the ID in the actual endpoint, so task underscore ID. And then we're gonna pass this into the function get tasks. And then here we can call our function that we just made. So db.get task by ID. And then we can pass in the ID that we have in our endpoint, that we pass in our endpoint, we can pass it into this function. And then we have to check if task is none. So if it's none, we return an error, JSON.dumps error. And then size code 404. And then here we can just return the task. Yeah, so we just called our get task by ID, passing into that function the actual ID of the task. And then we execute that SQL command, getting that specific task and returning that task. And if that task doesn't exist, then we return none. And then we go back, and if task happens to be none, then we throw an error or return an error, or we just return the actual task. Any questions so far? Okay. And then we can just, yeah, we can move on. Do you want to do that?
Oh, okay. Okay. So now we're gonna implement the endpoint and the DB function for creating a task. So this is our C in CRUD. So let's go back to the DB to implement the logic first. Making a new function called create, or in this case, insert task table. And here we have self. And when we want to create a new task, you need to get a description, and you need to get like whether or not it's done. So we're gonna have a variable for that, description, and just done. And here, let's use the same docstring. So you can go create a task. Create a task. Yep. And we're gonna use the same cursor to try and create a task. I'm just gonna copy it. So cursor equals self connection dot execute, and here we're gonna have the create task. So I'm just gonna implement it really quick. So we're gonna insert into the table task, and the values you want to insert is description and done, and they have the values. So we use the keyword values, and the values here are description and done, and we want to inject this into our not inject. I mean, we want to put this into this string. So we have we just put 2 question marks like this. And then again, we use the tuple on the corner here. So we have description and done. That is a bit long, but yeah. So we insert into task, description done, and the values are question mark, which will be, and those like the con execute, it will look at this tuple and it will input that into the string for us. Yeah.
how do you need a comma like after like the last term? Like
Yeah, actually, this one I don't need a comma actually.
Only if there's one
Yeah.
turn. It's just
So
like
because
simple.
this con.execute, this function, it accepts like a string and then a tuple. So you have to make sure it's a tuple. And if you just put like brackets and no comma, then it's not a tuple. So to make sure that it knows it's a tuple, we have this comma here. It's a bit ugly, but yeah. So now we have inserted it. And then what we have to do is here we have some like a database concept, but we just want to do self.con.commit. And what committing does is similar to what we had in Git. It's just like you're inserting something and then you're committing, you actually write to the database. That's what committing does. And after that, we just return, we want to return like what we created, right? So return cursor dot, and this is some more weird syntax, but I mean, weird function, but you're going to return the last row ID, which will just return that row like this. So like imagine we made a new like task. It's going to return this. Cursor will have this inside, and we're just going to return the last row ID, which will just be like in this case, this row. So we're just going to return whatever we created. And yep, so that's the DB logic. Now we go back to app.py again. And here we want to make a post request to create the task. So let's remove this parameter here. Instead, we're going to have the methods, and we're going to switch that to post like this. Change this to create task. Why do I keep remove the parameter? So this is endpoint for creating task. Right. So again, we still have to get the body from the user. The user is going to give us a description. It's going to give us a done. So we're doing body dot. Let's just remove this for now. Body equals JSON.loads, similar like last time. And here we're going to just get request.data, same as last time. And we're going to do the same thing. Description equals body.get description, and done equals body.get done. Same as last time. And oh, actually, yeah, the done might be like by default, you want the task to not be done. So let's actually just not use that. Let's just set it to false by default. So we're gonna have task ID. Let me just write this out first. This db dot insert task table. This one, description false. So we're gonna insert into the task table. We're gonna give it the description that we got from the user, and we're gonna set the done as false. And afterwards, oh, okay. I made a mistake just now. db.get task ID, task ID. Okay. So insert task table. Let me go back to the function. Right here, this last row ID, this will just give us an ID. It won't give us a whole row. So it will actually just return the ID of what we just created. And then here, we're putting that into the variable task ID. And then to get the task to show the user that we have, like we inserted it, we just get that task by ID and just give in the ID that we just got. It's a bit confusing here. Yeah, any questions for this? Let me just complete this. And then afterwards, you're just going to check if task is none. I'm just going to do the same thing here. If task is none, we're going to do error, and then it's like something went wrong while creating task. And then the status code is 400. And if we successfully made it, it's going to be 201. Yeah. And now let's just test it. So I'm going to save that. I will go here and let's do the same thing. Oh. What is wrong? Ah, this is the same name. So this is get task by ID. That should work. There we go. So I just use the same thing, and it should just be here. So let's create a task. Create a task. This was our old test from demo 1. Description is get all eggs, and let's send that. So we do get this back. Description ID 1 done equals 0. And then we go to get task, and let's see if it's actually there. There you go. It's there. Yeah. And now the cool thing is this is data persistence. Like data will not leave. So if I try and terminate my server with Control C, now it's off. And if I do like get all tasks, it's gonna error out. Like it's like it just can't reach the endpoint because my server's down. If I turn it back on and then I try again, you can see I still have the task I inputted just now. So you can see the data is not lost when my server is down because we have a database now. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one, which is updating a task. And I'm gonna summarize this on the board.
Okay, so our second to last function or endpoint is updating a task. So we're back in db.py. We're going to make a new function, update task by ID. And then we're going to pass in the values that we need. So we need the new description, the new done state, and the ID of the task that we're changing. So we're going to add a comment. Like before, we're going to execute another SQL command. So we're going to do the triple quotes to just like make it easier to read. So update task, set description, done, where, and then we need to pass in the values. So description, done, and then ID. So we're updating the task table where ID equals whatever ID that we passed in, and then we're updating description and done to the new description and done status. And remember that whenever you're creating a new task, creating new data or like updating data, you want to commit your changes. Yeah, that's basically it. And then back in app.py, we're gonna make our endpoints. So like before, we're gonna have an inputs body. So we're just getting that body with JSON.loads request.data. We're getting the description, and then we're gonna get the new done status. And then we're gonna call our new DB function. So update task by ID description, done, and task ID. So here we're passing in the new description that we got from the body, the new done that we got from the body, and then the task ID, which we're getting from the endpoint. And then we need to get this task that we just updated. So we're going to use another DB function that we created earlier, db.getTaskById. And then like before, we're going to see if this task exists. And then we're going to return this task, and it's going to be status code 200. Okay, and then now we're going to test that as well. Update task. Did you? So here we have one task. I'm gonna update the first task. Wait. Okay. So you can see I just changed done to true. I kept the description the same, but you can see the task it gave back to me, done is now true. So then if I get all the tasks, it changed to done equals true. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, so now we have the last, this is the last one? Yeah, we have the last one that we're gonna implement today, which is deleting, so D of CRUD. And just to like go over the flow before just to clarify what we're doing. Hopefully this makes it simple. It doesn't look that simple, but essentially the user will access your app with a route like get/task. It will hit our app.py, which is our running server. It will hit the endpoint like /task. It will run the function, and inside the function, it calls db.getTask. So then it will delegate to our db.py file, which has all the logic. And then inside the getTask function in db.py, it has the connect to db, and our db is a todo.db file, remember? It connects there, and then it runs this SQL query, like select all from task, runs it on the database. Database gives us back a list. We put in a list, we return that to app.py. This returns it back to a user, and this is what the user gets. So that's why we have two files and like a DB. And you can see like here, once we've run it, you can see todo DBs right there now. So this is just a taste of how cool and complex backend is. And you probably will not learn this in course until you're like a junior year or something. But later on, we'll be going to deployment where like this and like, I mean, real deployment, this part and this part is on different computers in the cloud, bunch of other stuff. So hopefully the diagram makes it a bit clear. So now let's do the delete task. We go into db.py. We're going to create the logic first as usual. So it will be def delete task by ID. We're going to take an ID in the parameter. And let's copy the same doc string here. Make sure documentation is good. So it deletes a task from the table. All right. So here we're going to run a SQL query. We're going to do self.connection.execute. And the query we're going to run is we're going to delete from the table task. And we want to delete only the ID that the user gives us because we don't want to wipe our entire database. So we're going to do where ID equals the question mark again. And put something in the question mark, we're going to put the ID in the tuple right here. There we go. So we delete from task where the ID is whatever the user gave us. And then we're just going to commit again, because writing in the database, you have to make sure you commit. That's it. That's the delete logic. Just running delete from. Save that. And now let's do the route again. So this is quite repetitive, but hopefully this like hammers it into you guys' heads so you guys remember how to do this. So we're again going to accept task ID here. We're going to change this to delete. We're going to change the function name to delete task. And this is an endpoint for deleting a task. You're not going to have body.json. And here you're going to be running db.delete task, and you're going to enter just the task ID, this. And we're going to, whatever the db gives us back, that's just a task, right? So we're just going to put that in a variable called task. Sorry, this is confusing. Like that. So we call the delete task from our database. And we're going to check if it's none. If it's none, then you're going to say again, task not found. Oh, I made a mistake.
Wait, doesn't return.
Yes, my bad. So here it should be db.getTask first. So you want to get task. So yeah, you want to get the task first by the ID. Check if it actually exists. And if it doesn't, if it does exist, then here you want to delete it. So you're going to db.delete task by ID, and you're gonna give it the ID. Yeah, catch. So first we get the task, make sure it exists, and then we delete it. And then we still have it in this variable, so we're gonna dump that to the user and 200. Oh, should work. So let's go back to Postman. Let's see what task we have. I think it's running. It's running. Let me just reload it. Okay. This. Can't be this smaller, but get all tasks. So we have one. Let's make another one just for fun. Great tasks. Let's say like here, buy more candy. I'm gonna send that. And let's say one more is like study for stats or something. Right. So now when we do get tasks, we should have 3. Okay, looks good. That's the JSON format. We have 3. So now let's try and delete number 2, buy more candy. So delete task by ID is right here. We're just gonna delete index number, like ID number 2. Send that. So we got that back. Let's check if it's actually deleted. Go back here and let's just send that. All right. So you see the task is actually gone. 1 and 2 is not there anymore. You only have 1 and 3. And let's do one more sanity check. If I turn my server off and run it again, do I get the same thing? Yes, I do. All right. So that's how you persist data in a database. And yeah, that's all. We did all the CRUD. We basically made the same to-do list app, but with a database this time, so your data is not lost. Yeah, any questions? Hopefully everything is clear. No questions? All right, so that's basically how your PA2 will look. I think PA2 is it Venmo? Or I'm not sure. Let me just look it up right now. So PA2 is right here. Assignment handout. Yeah, it is Venmo. So assignment 2 is due next Monday. It's always due on Monday. And you're going to be building Venmo with a database. So yeah, it's going to be fun. And let's start the Kahoot.